Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, and she perhaps needs no introduction as she's been an active member of UUCJ for over 22 years. However, I learned so many things I didn't know after reading her impressive resume that I'm going to share some of them with you. She has been the chair of the music committee for the past 19 years. She chaired the education and grant writing committee for religious education, and we have all enjoyed many musical events organized by Cee Cee. Her previous work experience includes being the Upward Bound program director at JU, ACLU assistant director and volunteer manager of the Greater Pittsburgh chapter. She was a daycare owner and teacher. And in 1998, she was an ACLU board member and served as president and also as a founding member and past president of the North Florida Folk Network. She also found time to host radio programs in Jacksonville, St. Augustine, and in Pittsburgh, focusing on children, music, and women's issues. And now it is my pleasure to welcome longtime church member, musician, vocalist, songwriter, activist, teacher, wife, and mother, Cee Severin.
Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by saying that, well, first, thank you, Donna. That was really sweet. But I do want to start by letting everybody know that I am white, mostly European, and I know that I'll never fully understand what it's like to be a person of color. I was born in 1950 and raised in an almost entirely white area in western central Pennsylvania. Once when I was young, I saw my friend's father coming home from the coal mine covered in coal dust. I thought he was a black man. Although I wasn't a UU, I was raised believing in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I am thankful to my parents for telling me that all people are created equal and for exposing me to their wide circle of friends. All white, but different nationalities and religious backgrounds. I didn't know at the time that my parents were racist. As I got older, I heard things that were kept from the younger children. Dad with his friends discussing how awful affirmative action was, how lazy, less qualified Blacks were getting all the jobs in the steel mills. I wasn't sure where I stood on this at the time, but I knew that I was uncomfortable with the tone and the feeling of the conversation. My senior year of high school, a teen nightclub opened in Ebensburg, the county seat, and I had the opportunity to go once with some friends. It was an all-white crowd until a small group from Johnstown, Pennsylvania came in. 3 boys and 2 girls, all Black. One of the boys asked a couple of different girls if they would like to dance and was turned down. Then he asked me. We had a good time dancing and talking that evening. When it was time for my group to leave, he asked if he could see me again sometime. I said, I don't know. The nightclub closed shortly after that, and I never saw him again. I often wondered if the club closed because of their arrival. Later that week, I asked my mother, over there, Ken, thanks. Later that week, I asked my mom how she would feel about me dating a Black boy. She was shocked. I've never seen her like that before or since. Her exact words were, "I'll tan your hide and hang it on the barn wall." Then she said, "Why?" I said, "Oh, no reason. I'm just curious." She calmed down. She took a deep breath. And she told me that she really wasn't too concerned about me dating a Black boy or about having Black friends. She was worried that it might become serious. And she felt that it would really be awful if I married a Black man. I mean, especially if we had children. Where could we live safely? I sort of understood her concerns, but I wondered why it had to be like this. I started college at the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown, a conservative two-year college in a white suburb. I did my student teaching at a local public school kindergarten. There was only one Black student in the class. On the last day of school, we did a lesson on careers where the students cut out pictures and made a collage. When the parents arrived to pick up their kids, the Black student grabbed his collage and ran to his mother and said that he was going to be a doctor. His mother looked at him sadly and said, "Don't talk crazy, son. We ain't got no money for college." I was young and naive, and I didn't know what to say, but it sure bothered me. I was lying awake in bed that night, wondering why. And I remembered something that happened to me when I was in grade school. I overheard some friends talking about how their parents were saving money for them to go to college. Well, there were 9 kids in my family, and I knew my parents didn't have any money to save. When I got home from school that day, I talked with my mother about this. She told me that I was not supposed to worry about it, that if I wanted to go to college enough, I would find a way to make it happen, and they would help me in any way they could. I knew that the hope that she had given me was the difference between me and that young Black student. At that point in my life, I didn't know that it was easier for white families to have hope than for Black families. I moved to Pittsburgh after college, where I had the opportunity to interact with many different people through volunteering and work. It wasn't always easy. I had to face my biases and fears. The first year, I worked as a substitute teacher. Here I was, a young, small, naive white girl from the country, working in mostly Black inner city schools. You can imagine how much fun that was. Still, it was important to me to face the challenge, to learn my deficiencies and my biases, and to work to change them. I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I've had plenty of opportunities since then. In the mid-1990s, I worked at the ACLU office in Pittsburgh as office manager, volunteer coordinator, later as assistant director. It's there that I learned that our county, the county I grew up in, Cambria, was the main hotspot for the Ku Klux Klan of Pennsylvania. Their headquarters were located in Ebensburg. For a while, we had an elderly Black woman working with us through a job training program. She had no office skills, and I spent a lot of time training her. She wanted to work, but she was very religious, and she wasn't so sure about the ACLU. She ended up supporting almost everything that we did, but not when it came to the Klan. She told me that when she was 3 years old, her father was hung by the KKK. Her uncle came to their home early the next morning. They all packed quickly and fled north to Pittsburgh. When I heard that the Grand Wizard of the Klan in Pennsylvania was coming to our office one day, I made arrangements for her to have that day off with pay. While at the ACLU, we began to investigate some major police misconduct cases, many of them against people of color. I don't have time to go into details now, but we collected hundreds of complaints, some of which were horrendous. Most of them did involve people of color. The ACLU's investigation paved the way for the first ever intervention by the U.S. Department of Justice to overhaul a major city police department. In 1998, we moved to Jacksonville, and I was hired by Janet Johnson, mother of Earl Johnson Jr., who spoke at our church a while ago, and the wife of Earl Johnson Sr., who was at that point was a local attorney for the NAACP, during the civil rights movement. I learned a lot from her, both professionally and personally. Janet often spoke about her experiences during the civil rights era. Her husband was always called into action whenever Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was in the area. Excuse me. During the time of the marches in St. Augustine, Dr. King told Earl it was very important that Earl keep him out of the St. Augustine jail. Dr. King said that he believed that if they took him there, he may never come out alive. Janet vividly recalled Earl's trips to the courthouse in St. Augustine. She told me how she had to drive him to the back door of the courthouse. Earl told her to slow down just enough for him to get out and then keep going and drive straight home. When the hearings were over, he would call her from a payphone to pick him up. He'd then wait inside the back door of the courthouse until he saw their car coming. He would run to the car and jump in so that the two of them could get out of there as quickly as possible. Janet said that it was frightening for her. Over my lifetime, I've learned many of the major problems of racism. I've also experienced minor problems and found that they can be just as damaging. I've worked with good Black students who had trouble doing their homework in the evenings because of gunfire in their neighborhoods. Or the young woman who spent most of her time at home caring for a grandmother who raised her, but was now very sick from a lifetime of poor health care. Her grandmother's doctors didn't fully understand the different needs of Blacks, especially Black women, who weren't usually included in medical research and studies. There's an old African proverb. Wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one person can embrace it, but together a tribe can. Let me suggest 3 things that we can all do to help ease the many problems associated with racism. First, don't insist that you are not racist. Everyone has their own biases, whether it's towards the clothes certain groups of people wear, the way they eat or drink, or the way they talk. Pay attention to what makes you uncomfortable and walk towards your discomfort. Don't brush it aside. Learn from it. Second, get involved with groups that work to stop racism and to support social justice, or volunteer with local organizations that work to improve the lives of those who have been marginalized. Third, when you see or hear racist or culturally biased actions or words aimed at another, speak up, especially if it's coming from your family or friends. Let them know that you are not comfortable with those words or suggest a better way for them to proceed. We all need to do this so that we can pursue the Unitarian Universalist goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.